All right, what a weekend, man. We are here.
I can't believe you are back and back so early, sounding spry. It's September 10th, year 2024. Welcome aboard, everybody. Listen to the Crushing Iron podcast. This is episode 796.
You nailed it. You nailed it, man. Yep, and we are back in the, I guess, our surroundings after a whirlwind of a weekend.
God, no kidding. I'm not gonna lie. I know you're gonna have a lot to say today, a lot more than me, but you sound a lot better than you usually do 48 hours post Ironman.
Do I?
Yeah.
Well, I guess that's the advantage of training for Ironman on a sup board. I feel spry.
You feel, dude.
I got a little phlegm coming out, but it's all right, man. Yeah. I feel good.
Yeah.
Good. My joints were killing me Sunday.
It was a whirlwind of a weekend from the 70.3 on Saturday and the full on Sunday. Weather was fantastic for the most part. Obviously some challenges, which I think, hey, listen, every race has their challenges. There's rarely ever a spectacular perfect day. So we'll cover all those. Yeah, it was awesome. It was awesome being out there and being able to support all the athletes. We had the 70.3. And then obviously being out there to watch everybody doing the full. Such a great, I know we say this every year because we've been doing it for like 8 years in a row, but it's such a great venue. It's yes, it's a long transition, but even just spectating the helix, there's nothing like it. And then you got the long transition, you get to change in the ballrooms. At least if you're doing the full, they got the parking garage, they got the view come up and down the helix. Even the swim start, even though it's, down to the old two looper, which is, whatever. But still, it's such a spectacle, and it is such a great location to do one of these. So it legit never disappoints. And the weather, obviously, we'll talk a little bit about that later. But from a temperature standpoint, you're going to have a hard time finding a better weekend.
Yeah, probably. It's got that reputation now, that one rainy year, but the weather up there is usually about perfect.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's hoodie and short weather. And if you're going to ask for temperatures, that's what it's going to be. But before we get into it, I think I saw like 1,500 did the half, maybe. What do you think? How many do you think did the full?
If that many. I think we saw like 12 or 1,300 on the racks.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So, and I was asking about that. Somebody told me that something about Madison only permits like 3,000 total over the weekend or something like that.
Interesting.
So, because that's the only reason I can figure out that Ironman sells out now at 1,200.
Right.
It used to be 3,000. So I don't know what that means, but I guess that may have played.
At a quick cursory glance on Iron Track, I think it looks like 1,200 finishers
in Ironman.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so maybe it was 15 and 15 or something, but
yeah, you're probably right. So that probably tracks. I think I saw 14, maybe 1,400 for the half. So again, I guess that sounds right. Back in the day, they only needed the full to do the 3,000, but maybe that's why they added the 7.3 in the first place. They saw the numbers dwindling, after they went to the rolling start, and maybe that's it. Maybe it's a solid 1,500 and 1,500. That's interesting.
Yeah, it is what it is. It's a good weekend all around. I do think that obviously when we say it like that, the 70.3 has really diluted the power behind it in a lot of ways, because you're talking about volunteers. Hey, can you volunteer? Yeah, sure. I'd love to. Can you do it tomorrow too? And they're gonna be like, I can't give you 2 days, man. But in all, the volunteer staffs were just loaded, man. I thought it was awesome. The weather was perfect. So the bike course was packed out pretty good. I think it has dwindled, some, but, it was all, it was a great race. It was, and I thought the finish line was pretty electric when I came in. It was pretty solid. So, I don't have any complaints. I do feel like it's just like diluted a little bit, with the two races. I don't know if doing them on the same day would be better or not.
I
don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of go back and forth with that. I mean, I think I can definitely see it from a volunteer standpoint that the volunteers, it's hard to muster up for both days, especially, I mean, if you're looking for local volunteers. I mean, you got a home football game, then you got the farmers market. It's like there are not many locals. I went for a run while they were on the bike on Saturday, and it's jam packed. The farmers market is busting. I guess it must have been an early football game. Everybody was out. People were walking from campus up towards the farmer's market. Like, those people aren't going to come out and probably volunteer. So you're looking to be a little short on the volunteer side, I think, already, especially for 70.3. And then if you're staying up late for a game, you're probably not going to be coming out to volunteer early the next morning. But then I also think that I honestly can't imagine, because I thought this year was one of the better spectated fulls that I had been around in a little bit, in terms of people on course, people still out there cheering. I think it was like 2 years ago, maybe it was the rainy year, there was nobody out there. So I do think that the 70.3 does have a positive impact on the full, in that some of those 70.3, I mean, we had quite a few 70.3 athletes that volunteered for the full.
Mm-hmm.
But then we had a ton of people spectating that had done the 70.3 the day before. And so they were still there.
Yeah,
so
that's true.
I think it kind of goes both ways in terms of, I think it's great to have that. And I mean, you were out there, and I saw a lot of athletes out there the day that were doing the full, that were out there the day before cheering on the 70.3. So it's a great point. It's an interesting dynamic, I think, with the city and the location, and having it back-to-back days. I do think it does kind of suck a little bit out of it, to an extent, just because I think maybe, as you and I have chatted about this, it feels a lot like, the marathon. I remember back in the day when we used to do the country music marathon, and you got, probably 80% of those people do the half, and the half is through the best streets and the best location. You run down, 12 South and Music Row and downtown. And as soon as you make a veer off to do the full,
no man's land.
Yeah, you're in no man's land. There's nobody there. And so I get, so I go back and forth, man. They're obviously, listen, in my opinion, whatever they have to do to still make it happen, I'm in favor of.
Yeah,
but I think the volunteer part is probably the biggest challenge.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a lot of construction downtown. I mean, so I'm not, maybe that had to do with some of the change in the bike routes. And I saw they're looking to do construction on John Nolan next year. So yeah, who knows what next year's going to look like. But hopefully that's all that's coming up. But yeah, all in all, great weekend. And from, what I hear, I mean, they still put on one of the best managed races out there.
I can't argue with that. I don't know. I think it's well done. I didn't have any problems whatsoever. And, it's funny, like next year, because they got the priority sign up email, and I just clicked it to see, because I don't even remember.
You did?
Yeah, I just wanted to see how much it was, like what my priority discount was, and it's $800.94, and I'm like, I might have thought about if it was $7.95 or something, but you're going $800.94. I mean, that's like pricing 101 right there.
Yeah, I mean, you got to put that at $7.98, and the minimum $7.95, just to see it in the sevens. Kind of gives you a little bit of a glimmer of hope.
100%. Now it's like 800, because I still, for some reason, have it in my head. I sign up. I don't even really pay too much attention, but I think the first one I signed up was like $650.
$650. Yep.
And that's where my head is still at. And now they're talking 800, and I'm like, that's no deal. How about you give a % off for every year you sign, you know what I mean? Like some kind of
listen, man, if that was the case, they'd be paying you to race.
That's not a bad idea, man.
Right?
Every year you sign up, you get like more, like 3% off or something. Next year.
I bet you it did sell. I mean, looking at the numbers, I just looked again real quick, the 70.3, and it had a little over 1,400 finishers. So you must be right in the 1,500 for both. But I mean, the fulls always have the highest do not start rate, just because they have the highest FOMO rate. People feel like they're going to mess up. They sign up for an Ironman and they just don't. After 3 months, they're like, yeah, I can't do that. That was a bad decision. They defer it. or life happens, they don't train enough, so they bail out, or obviously Ironman training obviously is the highest demand. Therefore, you get a lot of injuries as well. And then I also think you probably lose a lot of the fulls, like you said, because you have the half. Even though it's on outside of the swim, it's on a totally different course outside of the swim. I mean, it couldn't be any different. And so I think just a lot that goes into that. And I think, listen, 70.3s are they're announcing another one this week. I know in the Pacific Northwest. So like right now they're popping up 70.3. So I think right now they're just maybe trying to hold on to the fulls as long as possible. And listen, let's be honest about Wisconsin. We can kind of get into the day and you can kind of talk to us about how things unfolded. It is one of the fair courses out there. I mean, the swim is no joke, period. Even if it's not windy, the swim is no joke. And in my opinion, the two loopers actually made it harder because you have to swim through people that are going different speeds, right? So again, still not sure how the rolling start makes it safer when you've got to have that, because as you're standing up on top of the helix, watching these people go in, there are a lot of the top 10% males and females that are making that corner right as the last people are getting into the water. So you're having the fastest people swim over or have to go around. Very few go around, right? and create that much contact. And then they have to make their whole way through the event. I mean, so like the distance you create in like from the front to the back is huge. I mean, there was a point where the top guys out of the water, male and female, they were probably through 25, 30 miles of the bike before some of the people were getting close to getting out of the water.
Yeah.
And you're really, and from a volunteer spec point, like, I get you want to try to condense it, but that part just doesn't make any sense to me. If it was a 7.3 and you got the rolling start, whatever, they're never going to see each other again. But just watching like the melee and everybody's second loop is always slower, always, because you're having to navigate through so much traffic and the water's now choppier because you got more moving bodies in, and usually the wind picks up as the day goes on. So you got that. Then you got, the course, which we'll talk about that in a minute. I'll let you walk us through, but it's we've said it for what, every year we've been on this podcast. It's such a fair, tough, hard bike course. No matter what, no matter how prepared you are. And you just have to be, it's almost better to be strong than it is fast on that bike course. And then the run is no slouch either. It's not chat, right? Where it has these big, huge, hills you got to go up and down, but it's got enough change in it to make it hard. And to me, the biggest, what makes that course so fair is that the run obviously comes at the end, but it comes after you've taken all the body shots all day. And I saw that as a coach, just watching even some of the top tier athletes coming through there. You could just tell that they came off the bike and it looked like they had been in a backyard brawl. And honestly, like being in the square and not like venturing out to the bike course. There was no wind race morning. You kind of had no idea what was going on the bike course. For me as a coach, I kind of saw time. I told you before we went live, like the times looked a little bit slower than what I was expecting for quite a few athletes. But again, you never know, right? Like if you're on Iron Track, it could be they could have just had the mile markers at different places. You just never know. Did they stop and like lose a bottle? You just really never know. But then you kind of saw people coming off the bike, and this was one of those days where even though the sun was out, a couple clouds in the sky, the weather was fantastic. You could see it. We were all standing on our hot corner, and you could see people's faces and look like they had gotten the shit kicked out of them. No matter how fast they went, they looked like they had a day. And so when you look at the most physically demanding part of it, which is the run, when you're having to withstand so much pounding, you do that last when you're already kind of deteriorated from the day, from whether it's the roads, the wind, and the hills. It's just it's a never ending day of challenges.
Yeah, I mean, I'll start with the swim, and I really appreciate what you said about the 2 loops. And I actually went in this swim. I felt pretty good about my swim this year. I'd been swimming quite a bit, and that was probably wasn't my best time, but feeling wise, that was probably my best Ironman swim ever. And I think I was about 3 or 4 minutes slower on my second lap, but I was feeling great when I turned. So I know I was swimming good, but there was some congestion, and to my fault, I started a little bit far back. I tried to get up there, but I was just sick of pushing through, and just took my time and got in. And dude, my swim map is perfect. I mean, like for me, that's like an unbelievable. I mean, it's just like line or on top of line the whole way. So I was really kind of happy about that, but I was a tad disappointed when I saw, I guess, 119. I think in a single loop, that might have been more like a 115, something like that. Just because I felt so good and I was right on it, and I'd been practicing open water and sighting. I felt really good. I mean, I was never off the buoy line, and the whole day I planned to kind of go in the water and start out wide and start like just stay wide, but everybody was out there. So I just took the inside from the get-go and just made it happen. I actually started on the out, and I let everybody go.
Did you always keep the buoys to the right, or did you sneak in a few?
Oh, I was in the inside a lot. Yeah. I
such a let.
I just like
such a smart move.
Well, I mean, I watched it. I was starting on the left entry line because I was going to stay wide for the first buoy, and then I saw everybody moving that way. So I actually let people go in front of me and went inside this year, which is the opposite. It was just like a last minute thought because I saw the opening on the buoy line, and I'm like, I'm just going that way. Fuck it, So
yeah.
And then I was right inside a lot of them I just stayed right on the inside, but anyway, so I felt good coming out of the water. I was a little bummed about the time, but whatever. And then, I felt good, man, getting out of there. And then we got on the bike. And like you said, man, it was just, I think the illusion was that it's going to be a perfect day. And that kind of like puts this seed in your head that it's just going to be a cruise. You're just going to be out cruising fast, And it was a little cooler. And I think the big fear was, again, it's sort of like, oh, it's going to be cold, and like layer up and all this shit. And I put the bags in and arm warmers, and I think by mile 10, I was hot, so I kind of started, I guess I left him up for about halfway through, but I rolled down my arm warmers and I think, and then I took out the bags pretty early. I left them in, but I kept them down. But anyway, it was not cold, I didn't think at all. I did see somebody with a disc wheel, a pointy arrow helmet, with a jacket tied around their back, flapping in the wind, which I thought was pretty awesome. But yeah, dude, we got onto that stick, and we talk about it all the time, how coming back is just torture going into the wind. It was in our face from the jump, the wind, and it was not a light wind, I didn't feel like, for most of the day. So the way out, that was the first time I really noticed how hilly it is on the way out, because I always feel like it's pretty smooth sailing on the way out to Verona. But this time it was like, plus I was kind of trying to play conservative because I'm thinking, well, I'm just going to play it smart and run, get the run. But it just, I got so far behind the 8 ball for what I was kind of hoping for that I just had to accept it at some point. But yeah, the wind was tough, and it always seemed to come at the wrong times. Like I was telling you earlier about, the flatter, they're sort of false flatty sections, but they're on highways and the road is pretty good, and you're going into the wind, and then, up and downs, and then, climbing to Verona was right into the wind again. Mount Horeb. And so those sections became tougher than normal. They're kind of like the ones that, like I don't mind climbing, it's almost like a little escape for me. You just kind of find a little gear and just kind of push up the hill under control. It's almost like a rest phase for me in a way, but then you got to kind of get back at it, and then you're bombing, down and trying to get up, little hills, and the roads are rough. It's sort of like you're saying, man, it's body blow after body blow. And it's just, it's almost like I feel like if that whole thing was just a slight grade climb the whole time, it'd be easier than just, the change of attitude in your biking. It's sort of like climb. You got to get up, and then you got to get over, and you got to get on it, and then you got a nice 2-mile flat section. You got to be an arrow and kind of stay up on your power, and all these things kind of just really, really tear at your me. It isn't the legs as much as the body, man.
Yeah.
And literally, but again, this is an ongoing saga with me. But like these fucking aero bars, man. The last year the center piece came a little loose, and so my aero bars were a little loose in general.
Mm-hmm.
This year, both pads came loose.
Both? Oh,
and then, God. I mean, it was all summer, no problem whatsoever. But on this race,
right?
Like my right one, the right side just basically broke, so I had to lean on the inside on the edge of it. And then the left one was just totally loose. And it was just a little dicey. But I had to stay in it because my wrists were just killing me, man. It's like I needed a little break there. But anyway, so that's kind of how I felt. But we did get the wind at our back coming back on Whalen on the stick, which was, thank God, because if that had shifted or something, it would have been a really bad situation.
I think a couple of things to kind of go back. I think a lot of because we used to do this in Louisville, right? When they had the Louisville swim, is that, I think people forget that when you listen to the athlete briefing or you read the athlete guide, the only time you have to keep those buoys to your right is the corner buoy.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. You only have to make the corner buoy to your right. And because outside of that, you're all making the same distance. So the closest you can go to it, the better. And so sometimes that means like going inside the buoys. You're not cheating, right? It's the same distance. You're just going straight. Like you could swim as far as 10 feet, 15 feet inside the buoy. It's the same distance as left because you got to come right back around and could still come around that buoy. And so I think that was a really smart call. But it is like there's, and listening to you talk about like the beginning of the race, and it's interesting, right? You think about the psyche, and you mentioned it about the cool and really nice weather, and then and another piece of it too is you got to see some of it the day before, right? You get to see the swim. It wasn't, the Saturday morning, at least in my opinion, from a visual, like the 70.3 swim looked a little bit choppier than the full day. And it was at least 10 to 15 degrees cool. I mean, I came out in the same kind of get up that I had on Saturdays I did Sunday. And after about 10 minutes, I was hot. I mean, it was definitely warmer, at least 10 to 15 degrees warmer that morning. And then you saw them, then you had people coming out on the run for the 70.3, and it was perfect. It was perfect. No wind, at least on the on the run course. I was in a hoodie and shorts all day, and I didn't feel like I sweat. It was money. And then you have the full, right? So you go out there and it's a little bit warmer. Maybe you anticipated it being really cold, and so maybe you overdress, or maybe you don't change on the fly. And like, maybe I'm not that hot. But the thing about the full to me is that and you look at other courses, like you look at Chat coming up, Ironman California coming up. Even Maryland, who's got the tougher of those 3 swims. But we always talk about easing into the day. You really want to ease in the day, take the swim kind of controlled and easy, and then just kind of ease your way into the bike, because it's all about energy expenditure and keeping things kind of reined in. Well, you get that for all of about a loop in Wisconsin, right? And even if you want and you tell yourself you're not swimming hard, on that second loop, your effort, right? If you think about it, if you think about the fact that every person that I tracked was slower on loop 2, you're putting out the same effort, probably putting out more effort, right? Even if you're taking a perfect line, like it sounds like you did, even if you do that, the water's still choppier because of all the people that are in it. The wind's always picking up from the start of the day, and you're having to navigate in and around people, right? And you're probably having to honestly sight more, which I also think takes a lot out of you.
Oh, yeah.
So all that to say, you start off just before, basically once you've gotten through 1.2 miles of the swim, not even the whole way done, and you're immediately having to kind of up the effort and be a little more engaged. And because I think that's also a very underestimated piece of this swim course is, a lot of swims, especially when now, even back in the day, like when you and I did it the last, like with the rolling start, I think it maybe took 100 meters before I felt like I was swimming alone. It spreads out super quick, and you can kind of just get into your own groove, right? And you can kind of get lost in your head, and you can just kind of relax, which is great. You can start going over like, what am I going to do in transition? What am I going to do during the bike? Like, how am I going to pace this? Remind yourself to take it slow. Well, you almost can kind of see it, like watching the top end come through, because it wasn't so jumbled. Like, they're sighting more frequently. They're having to go left. They're having to go right. They're having to swim over. They're having to take a different line. You have to be a lot more mentally engaged out of the gate than at other races. And so you do that. I mean, Lake Placid is like that too. So I think people don't really anticipate that extra mental energy of, like, I wasn't ready to start quote unquote racing yet, right? Like, even though you're not quote unquote maybe trying to beat the person in the water next to you, you got to be in it after 30 minutes versus giving yourself an hour and 10, hour and 20, hour and 30. So you make yourself through, you're fighting. Then you got that unrelenting, run up the helix, which is brutal in every right, but also amazing. Then you get out there and you're used to, maybe a flatter start, but the roads are a little bit jarring, and then you got a headwind. And I'm sure a lot of people are like, damn it, I wasn't ready to start yet. Right. I wasn't ready to start digging into my pouch and kind of pull out my willpower just quite this yet. So I think there's nothing, on a course that's not an out and back, like at least an out and back course is like, I remember Texas 70.3 when I did it, I knew I had a tailwind going out. So I knew what was coming, because it's out and back, right? You go out, you got a tailwind, you come out, you come back in, it's going to suck. So you've got to conserve energy. Well, in a course like Wisconsin, where there is no out and back, right? It's lefts, it's rights, it's uphills, it's downhills, and you don't know which way the wind is coming. I think it makes it that much harder to kind of predict and prepare. Like, how am I managing my effort for the day? And then again, if you have things happen, like your aero pad's coming loose, you get a flat tire, you lose a bottle, like all these things. I just think it's one of those courses where I honestly think you're better off being strong than you are fast. Mm-hmm. And I know that might not make sense, but I think that allows you to kind of withstand the punishment, which is that course. And a reason, and the reason people don't do it, and the reason a lot of people do it, because it is relentless from the get-go. And I think that's just one piece that I think we forget about in courses like this, that you don't have much time to kind of work your way into your Ironman lather. You're kind of in it from the beginning, and it's basically like you go in, you get a 30-minute warm up, then then you do like a whole new mass start all over again, because you're around more people in the second loop than you were in the first.
Man, I think you just hit on something that maybe I've been searching for but couldn't find. But that mentally engaged part, you're so right, man. It was like even the second loop of that swim. I mean, there would be times when I would find, like, I'd look up and I'd see, oh, there's a lot of clean water here. I'm just going to kind of not sight for a little bit. And then I'd look up, like, 20 strokes later, and there'd just be a log jam just right in my face, or especially around the turn buoys. You got to kind of, so yeah, I mean, on the second loop, I definitely used some of that. I had to, really kind of put the hammer down a few times to get away from situations. So yeah, you're doing that. And then that bike course, you just can't, there's really no stretches where you can just kind of sit and arrow and just kind of zone out, or like get into a flow, because the sections that maybe you can do that were the ones that were just, drilling you with the wind in your face, so that it really didn't give that opportunity. But there's so many turns and so many terrain changes all over the place that it's like, you're almost having to shift your mental approach. It's like, all right, I got to grit it up here. All right, I got to relax here. But also there's obviously some sections where you can really get some good speed, but it's kind of like right after a big climb or something. So you got to like go into a different mode all the time. I feel like the whole day is just like testing you to go different places in your brain, or at least it is for me. And with the turns and the different inclines and some of the rollers you can get up, some of them you can't. You always got to be gearing. I mean, the gearing alone, and that, like I don't have electronic shifting, and I think that would have made a massive difference for me this year again, because it's just like, honestly, towards the end, man, it just kind of hurts for me to be shifting. It's like my wrists and my hands hurt, and it becomes an issue. And then, you get to the run, it's really kind of similar in the sense that there's so many turns and you're always going somewhere else. And there's really, there is along the lake over there's a path, but like half of it's gravel, and then half of it, then it's not like you can really just sit in your pocket all the time, because you're facing different turns and challenges. And like this year, the new addition was kind of an unexpected grinder. They took out the hill section by Observatory, but I think what they added was probably, about the same. And it was a tough little section for sure, with some pinchers. And I really think it was about equal, to be honest. There was some, weird little spiral ramp thing we had to climb and then go down. So I don't know. It was all good, but it's really hard to kind of just find your rhythm, I think.
And I think that makes it that's why it's so challenging, right? Mm-hmm. It's like there is no groove. And I think another one of the more challenging pieces of that race, in the fact that, like you said, there is no rhythm, is that like on flat courses that have like these longer stretches, you start to get a feel for what feels right and what doesn't feel right. Mm-hmm. Like you get a 10 mile or even a 12 mile stretch, whatever, even a 10 or 15 minute mile stretch, right? Where you're in aero and you're moving through cadences. You're like, this power feels right. And let me just kind of stick here. And then, like you said, you can just kind of zone out and give yourself, because I know we talk about this a lot, but we mentioned it a lot. I think in like the March, April, May timeframe, when people kind of get outside for the first time, and you just realize how mentally fatigued you get by even just paying attention to normal things, right? To me, it's like very similar to like, taking an 8-hour road trip. Like, you're completely sedentary for 8 hours. You're not moving. You're not expending any energy. You're not doing a workout, but you mentally have to stay on it the whole time. That's why people are just so exhausted after they sit in a seat and drive. And so I think, like, depending on how you train and what you're prepared for, like, not having those periods of time to just kind of not be in the moment, I think that gives people a lot bigger of a break in training than they really think, right? They hop on their bike, they watch Netflix, or they got it in ERG mode, or throw on Zip. Like, there's always something to, where I can just kind of zone out, or I can just hop on and do work for a little bit. Same thing with swimming, right? You hop in the pool, you can cruise through 2,000 yards, make your grocery list, and then veer off and forget what you're doing, and then all of a sudden you're done 2K, right? And so I think, like, the fact that you have to stay present, and that there really aren't these signs of, all right, this feels good, this doesn't, and then I know I can just sit with this for a period of time. It just doesn't exist on that course. It's same goes when it starts in the swim. You can have this nice, long, easy stroke, right? And that feels good, and that feels right in the moment. That feels great from an effort standpoint. And then you go on loop 2, and it probably all changes. Your stroke rate probably picks up a little bit, or you're having to take strokes in a different direction and get in and around people. Your effort picks up. You're having to sight more, right? I think that's a huge lower back issue that people don't think through when they get into these races, right? Is the amount of sighting people have to do in a race like this puts strain on your lower back. If you just think of your body position in the water and and how you sight, you arch your back in that way to where it puts a lot of pressure on your lower back. And then you hop on a course, right? You come out down the helix, and then you hop on a bumpy road and a bike path. Like, you couldn't ask for a less groovy start than that, right? There is no settling in and just pedaling. You're having to navigate. It's like you're trying to get out of your neighborhood with rocks and on a mountain bike, and it's just. And then, like you said, you don't even have that like you used to here, right? And so you have those first 2 miles, you kind of get your legs underneath you, kind of figure things out. And I was like, damn it, I'm already being asked to like make decisions at mile 5, right? I wasn't expecting this. Most people are probably had a plan for the stick, or excuse me, had a plan, for the stick, the loops, and then back to the stick again. But instead they were like, oh, hey, I know you weren't planning on like really kind of up in the gate till like, mile 6, or excuse me, like, mile 60, but here we are. It's mile 60. Better get ready to go. And like we use this analogy a lot with sports. It's like you have a great team that comes out and they're expecting this other team to just lay over, and the other team just punches them in the mouth out of the gate. And even though they're really, really good and really, really athletic and are better, sometimes it takes them 3-4 quarters to even like eventually like come back from it, or sometimes they don't because they're just not expecting it. And then again, like you have that course where it's just flat out relentless. And I think the biggest piece, like going back to, it's better to be strong than fast on that course is even if you are fast, that's been deteriorated. So when you do, let's say you do get the tailwind from mile 95 on, most people still lose speed, right? Because you're just so fatigued and you're so done. You don't want to hold air position. Your arms are tired. Your body's tired. You got bump after bump after bump. You're kind of like wincing at the side of every pothole. Then you hop on that damn bike path. There's nothing worse than seeing your miles per hour just completely go down the last 5 miles when you're trying to like work hard around corners and you're being asked to be, and then you get to fucking Helix and you got to go back up it again. Mm-hmm. Then you head out, like you said, in the run course. There's spots where you can get groove, and I think the only one left, like you said, is right there by the lake. But even then, it's rolling and it's on like packed sand, so it's not even a fast part of it, right? It's not like a perfectly paved stretch of a greenway where you can really pick it up. It's still like, it's not concrete and it's not asphalt. It's still like soft, compact sand. So you're still having to work extra effort just to be there. And so it's just, I think people, again, always, and we saw this, like, again, on the hot corners, people coming out, they looked like they had been beaten up before they even got to where we were standing, which is probably little less than a mile onto the run. And I think that played a huge piece of it, of seeing how tough that course is. As people want to go back because they want to kind of overcome the challenge. But, as with all things in life, like the further we distance ourselves from that thing, the easier we feel like we handle it, or we tend not to maybe respect how absolutely difficult and hard it was in the moment. It's like, I think everyone that does these like really challenging courses, or just an Ironman in general, should do like a 5-minute video to themselves right after the race that they can like go back and remind themselves, as the training months and the weeks, especially like the peak weeks goes on, of just how tough it is, and how, I think durability is probably the number one thing that comes to mind when you see that course. Is just, it's how durable and how resilient have I made my body to where these this extra swimming and extra contact in the swim and the extra bumps in the road and the extra wind, and then they get on the run course and it's like, your run speed is irrelevant. It's all about how long you can hold. And I saw that from just watching times in the age groups, from the top end of all age groups. They were all slower than they've probably ever been, that I can remember. Looking and tracking, kind of going back, is like, and you go, oh well, you could say, oh well, maybe the field wasn't there, but that's not true. I mean, it was just one of those hard kind of gut punching days where you're kind of take it in the first round, and you might not have been totally ready to kind of take it till maybe round 7 or 8 when you can expect it. Right. But a challenging day listen, they're always challenging days, but that's why that course is so hard.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I got off the bike, the last 2 years, the rain year, and then last year when I had that flat and I tried to make up time and shit. I got off the bike absolutely not wanting to run at all. Zero. I had zero in my brain. I was like, I do not want to do this at all. This year, I didn't quite have that. I was kind of like, okay, I felt good enough where I thought, maybe I can pull this run off, or something. And I planned to, I had a run walk system that I've been practicing. I was really happy with, and I kind of was shooting for hopefully like a 10:30 average or something like that, or whatever. But initially, when you come out with that plan and everything, And, because in order to do that, I would have had to have been running occasionally in the, mid 9s or something like that. I had this whole thing planned out. And, but when on the first few miles, all I was trying to do is just get in a groove, find my run legs, and that was the whole thing. And when I look at my watch and I'm seeing my run sections are over 10, I'm like, I knew I was in trouble with my goal. But, but the reality was, and this is, I think, something everybody faces, right? And this is why I want to bring it up, is because if I would have stuck with that, so what I started doing about mile 4 or 5 was like trying to find a different answer. All right, so let's like throw the game plan into the shitter and try and figure out the answer. And so I started doing that, but it kind of started imploding a little bit more. Whereas if I would have maybe stuck with my plan, I might have been able to pull out an 11 minute mile pace. But it turned into like 12 something, and and that was like, but this is like out of all my Ironmans, I think I've been in the Portal John once on the run. That's in 11 years. And this year I was in there twice trying to because I had some like abdominal cramping going on. I was just trying to, without getting into it, just trying to relieve some of that pressure. And because I couldn't, whenever I tried to run, it was like I could shuffle. Okay. But then when I tried to open it up, that was when I would just get tremendous pains. And so I was just trying to figure that out for most of the day. And then, I was trying everything from, everything almost, just to try to move something through or get it figured out or whatever. And nothing really seemed to come to way. I was trying Coke a little early, but then at mile 20 or something like that, I just went straight Coke. And that, I think my best running was actually my last 6 miles, which is kind of weird. I mean, I was still rock running, but I felt like I was holding a pretty solid groove for most of it. And I felt okay towards the end. So, I mean, that's the way I look at it, is okay, well, I just did this, and I felt pretty good at the end. I mean, there's got to be something there, So I really couldn't find that run groove that I was hoping for, but I think I could have if I hadn't had that. But I mean, obviously that's a part of it, right? Everybody's like on the perfect day. My perfect day would have been no wind. I probably could have had a better ride, obviously, and then if I could have not had cramps, I would have had a better run. So, that all matters. When people say perfect,
what do you think was the root cause of the stomach issues?
I went around on that. I don't really know. I think it was because I didn't feel it on the bike at all. And then when I got out to the run, it was just like a gas thing. So maybe it was like too many of those. I mean, normally I probably would, like for me, I normally eat a lot more solids, and I was doing like those gel block things that may have had something to do with it. And then, cause when I eat a lot like that, I tend to drink a little more plain water. I don't know, man. I tend to I didn't really, I may have been a little underhydrated, to be honest, because I usually drink a little bit more water when I'm riding. I know that's not really your thing, but I don't know. I kind of get into these things where I feel like sometimes the more I know about this shit, the less I know. You know what I mean? Like I used to just kind of go wing it and drink and just slam down water and slam down Scratch or Gatorade or whatever. And just pee on the bike a little bit more and just be fine. And this year I kind of felt like I was trying to, really dial it in and whatever. And it just, I don't know, plus I'm getting older, so who knows, man.
Well, I think you bring up an outstanding point. And I think this is actually a topic I want to discuss. We can kind of go into maybe more detail on the next one, but that was like a conversation I was having a ton with some of the other coaches that were there spectating, like Aaron and CJ. We were talking about how, because I don't disagree with you at all. I think, in terms of because to me, it's not the more the worse off you are. It's the more we tend to read, the worse off we are. Mm-hmm. because you can read something and not know it or not maybe think it. Because I mean, I think I have seen more and more GI issue problems come up since there became this, because now it's like mainstream and people are following all these pro athletes and they're pushing all their products 24/7, right? Take all this precision hydration, take 120 grams an hour and do all these things. And like, there's no real true understanding of like the balance you need. Because I totally agree with you on the water front. Like I saw so many people, it looked like they had just played like a round of sand volleyball, you know, so like salt just all over their body, you know, on not even that hot of a day. Right. Not even that hot of a day. And of course, a lot of people think, oh, well, I got salt. I might need to replenish it. And I need even more salt like that. No, that's not the answer. Like, so I think a lot of people have kind of gotten into, and you're 100% right. Like, I think there's a fine line in taking in more water, because it's also precious real estate in your stomach, right? Depending on how your gut is. But I think what happens is if you're taking in not enough water, but too much sodium, then that's a problem, because you don't have enough water to hold on. The sodium is there to hold on to the water. And so when you get those things out of whack, so I think people are probably, in my opinion, people are taking a lot more sodium than what they probably truly really need, and less fueling and hydration, because now it's all about, you know, how aero can my bike be? How many condensed bottles can I have? You know, and then you got people trying to shove, you know, 90, 100, 120 grams of carbs down their throat when they're pedaling like barely zone 2. Like, you're trying to gain weight here, people. Like the pros that you watch are doing this are burning through so many calories. It's ridiculous, because they're racing this at like high zone 2 aerobic threshold, low zone 3 for a full. Like, they're just burning through insane amounts of calories, right? Same for a 7.3. Like, they're doing, you know, they're going zone 3, zone 4. You're going to be out there burning the same amount of calories over twice the time. You know, from a 7 and 8 hour finisher to the 16 to 17 hour finisher, like, you're burning them, and they might even burn more calories at that rate, but you're trying to replicate it. So I think that's, to me, like, that's a piece that I know that I want to talk through with a lot of athletes, is like, what was your plan? And even then, like, even when you use these calculators or you do these, you know, these sweat tests, which is like the popular thing to do. Like, it's just also very dependent on like the conditions of the day or for you. Like, you know, because to me, sweat testing is a lot like any kind of other testing you do. Like, it could be, it could be a heavy sweat day depending on, you know, the time of day you do it. Have you had coffee? You know, what's the room temperature like? Are you stressed? You know, and different factors if you're a female. Same thing goes with like a run test and a bike test, right? You might have the best day ever on your test, and now you're going to be like 10 or 15 watts high, or you could have the worst day, but now you're going to be 10 to 15 watts low. And then now you're going to plan the next 12 weeks around that one thing. And so I think we have gone, it's become so mainstream, and the feed is the worst, but all they do is, you know, want you to shove, you know, sugar down your throat 24/7 and sodium pills, you know, because it you know, makes it better, you know, for them. They spend more money. But I think that's, I mean, because I had this conversation. I mean, it's funny you said that about, like, you know, going back to when you should just drink right thirst. Like, if I go back and look at some of my best races, like I think I was even talking to Aaron about this, or somebody, the last time you and I did Wisconsin. I didn't have any idea what I took in.
Yeah.
No clue. I mean, I made my, you know, I made my bottles. I knew how many, like, I knew what I needed to take in from a scoop standpoint, right? Like, how many scoops I needed to do. And I put it through bottles, and I stopped at an aid station, you know, but I didn't, like, you know, get my scale out and perfectly do it. I just kind of knew what I needed. And then I just drank to thirst. And when I felt a little bit too, like, you know, sweet, because back then it was like the straight up EFS. There wasn't EFS Pro, and it can be real sugary. And then I went to like, you know, a little bit of water, and I never had issues. And so I think there's this really fine line in like seeing things and hearing things and reading what, you know, anomalies, you know, like professionals do that are also at a training and racing at a totally different level, and then trying to replicate it, and then wondering, you know, like, do I really feel like I need salt? You know, like I was, and this isn't, that has no like scientific legs to it at all, but I was telling somebody else that seeing all these people covered in salt, on a 70-degree day, right? I was like, if I go out and push mow the grass in 100-degree heat, and maybe I'm out there for an hour and then I, weed eat and then blow. Guess how much salt I have in my body? Zilch. Got zero.
Yeah.
Got zero. Right? Middle of summer, you're sweating like crazy. You got nothing. Right? But then you go out and you do like a 3-hour ride and you're taking all these extra salt pills and precision fueling 6,000 milligrams sodium, whatever they've got. And all of a sudden you're like caked in salt. And like, but the thing is, it's funny, right? Because people think, oh, well, I just need more salt.
Right.
I know. The answer is always more, right? Same thing with carbohydrates. Oh, I bonked. I must need more carbohydrates. I'm like, no, your stomach's probably like, why am I trying to digest so much sugar and processed fuel when we're going like barely zone 1 right now? And you're trying to eat like we're burning through 3 times the calories. It's a really, in an Ironman, like the minute you go in the water, there's infinitely more things that can go wrong than right, in my opinion. And fueling is the one where it has to go right. And so I think you bring up an outstanding point that I think really has to be thought through for a lot of people in terms of, hey, like if I really want to get the most out of my day, do I really understand the fueling needs that I have? And then where did I get those from? And I think that's to me, the fueling part is of an Ironman is almost more important than, I know it sounds crazy, but it's almost more important than a lot of the fitness.
No, I don't think it sounds crazy at all. I mean, plus, if you're fit enough to do it, and then, like you're saying, man, it's sort of like that your body's trying to deal with all this shit. I mean, I hate to simplify it because honestly, I used to race. I mean, seriously, it was sort of like I think I would just go with maybe a little scratch in the beginning, 2 bottles. I never did like special needs. I would just go to Gatorade after that. So I'd try to get through a Gatorade by every aid station and then maybe a half bottle of water. And then I'd eat a Cliff Bar between every hour. That was it. And I don't know if that's the right, I mean, obviously I'm going to get like serious pushback on that, but, for like what you said, I mean, it's sort of like the effort you should be putting into a full, most people, isn't going to be like super, super high. It's just like, the question becomes, are you overloading and confusing your body all over the place? In a way, I mean, it's a really like, you can go forever on these discussions, I'm sure, but like, but you're right. I mean, you start getting this salt thing and then next thing you know, you're like pounding salt out there and, I don't know. I just like, I'm so in tune, I think, with my body that I don't know exactly, but I know when something's off. And sometimes you're doing the wrong thing. It's sort of like when you're sick and you're craving something, you start eating it, but it's making it worse. Mm-hmm. It's almost like you're trying to get rid of salt and your tongue's like real salty or whatever. So it's craving more salt. You know what I mean? It's like a weird cycle or circle you're putting yourself in.
I think you training your body, and it's different for everyone. Mm-hmm. And I do think that there is a max and a minimum for every athlete to get the most out of themselves. And I think that's true in a lot of ways, but I think when it comes to things like sodium and especially like the amounts of sugar and carbohydrates people are trying to shove in their body, like I do think that I'll probably get pushback from this too, but that's fine. I do think it's just like anything else. Like the more we put in, the more our body depends. And so you work your way up to 80 or 90 grams of carbs an hour, then you start to bonk. So what do you need now? Oh, I need 120. And you wake at 120, like I'm still bonking and feeling I need more, right? Like, no, maybe that's not the answer. Like maybe you've trained your body to where that's all it. Because I think about this all the time with athletes. I'm like, are you just training your body to need more sugar all the time to be able to perform? Is that all you're doing? Or are you really trying to get like to be, metabolically flexible in having just enough? Because to me, you should have just enough. You should need just enough to get you through.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Not too much, right? Because it's still listen, dude, it's still waste. It's still, it's like the guy who's taking 60 grams of protein, 20 minutes after his protein shake and, thinking your body's going to absorb 60, right? As I think we've gotten to this point is like, again, we live in a world where more is always better, but it's just like, to me, it's sugar and the amount of stuff. It's just like your body's very trainable. Like you can do all these things off, we become what we want to become. Right. If you want to become somebody who uses minimal carbohydrates, you're going to be minimal carbohydrates and still probably race really well. Like I think there's a threshold in which is reasonable or not. But then if you're a guy or a girl who thinks they need 120, then guess what? You're going to need 120. And that's not necessarily the answer, because I was looking back on this. I don't think I've talked about it on the cast, but when I look back at my Texas training, there'd be my best long rides. I didn't do any like massive, meal the morning of, or preload with gels. I wasn't trying to like shove. And I know the first thing people are going to say is, oh, well, you got to train your gut, man. You got to train your gut. Which I also think is true, but also people take that in a distorted way. And I look back at the rides that I ended up quitting after like an hour and a half. And it were the ones where I took in like a much bigger carb heavy breakfast. And then the first like 15, 30, 45 hour minutes, I was trying to take in more carbohydrates and Martin gels and a couple of their bars. My heart rate would skyrocket from the sugar and the carbohydrates, and the fact that my body was now having to work so hard to now move, but also to digest what I was doing. And listen, again, I know what you're going to, you got to train your gut, man. It's all about gut training, shove it in and work on it. And like, I don't think everyone is wired like that. Because if I go back to even looking at like the best shape I was ever in, which was that last year we were at the hub and I was training for Texas 70.3 and I got probably the best shape of my life. Like, I think I'd do like 4 hours on the watt bike with probably like 4 bottles of base hydro, which is, I think, like one of the lowest of like the carb end. It's high, it's a little bit higher in soda, but it doesn't have that many carbohydrates in it versus everybody else. And I was just going off, do I feel like I need more or not? And so so for me, like if I look back and I look at like what's worked and what's not worked versus exactly what you said, when you're saying I feel like the more I know, the less I know. It's kind of like the more you know, the less you understand, or the farther you get away from really knowing what your body needs. Because I do believe that. I do believe that you can inherently tell what you need and don't need by listening to your body's signals. Mm-hmm. Right? Is it sugar? Is it sodium? Is it just water? Right? And then why? And a lot of times I think a lot of people are training their bodies to become more metabolically inflexible and more dependent on these insane amounts of sugar, which again, if we're looking at what we do as like a holistic health thing, do you really think that's all that fantastic for you? Right? To be downing enormous amounts of sugar 24/7, for your next hour and 15-minute run? Like probably not. Right? And so I just think it's a really interesting topic that I think a lot of people get way too opinionated about. But I think for me, like when I look at it, and I think I think when we look at it as amateurs, right? And I think a lot of amateurs take themselves way more seriously than professionals. But if we look at ourselves as amateurs, and I said, if I asked you, Mike, and I was like, hey man, next time you go out and you do Ironman Wisconsin, would you, and you could have a time of 11:30 and you could spend all this time training your gut and, spending all this money on gels and sugar and just throwing all kinds of shit in your body, but you're going to get an 11:30, right? Or you can maybe do things a little bit differently and not take in half as much, but you'd probably only squeeze out a 10:40. Right. But you're not taking in nearly these enormous amounts of sugar and carbs 24/7, because carbs aren't bad. Sugar isn't bad. Right. It's just the amount that people use, but it's only going to get you a 10:40. I bet you'd go with the 10:40 because of how much better you would feel just like on a regular basis, and what you're, again, training your body to again, to me, it's not about training your body to not to crave or to not crave. It's just training your body to just not crave, period. Correct. And just listening and training your body in a way that can be useful, again, not just for like the way that we are as triathletes and how we want to race, but like how we want to just like live as how we want to like live as a human, right? And what we become so dependent on is, but again, it's shoved down your throat 24/7, no matter what podcast you listen to about making all these purchases and buying all this sugar and buying all these, carbohydrates and 120 grams and training your gut. And like, to me, it just, and again, I'm no, exercise physiologist, but I've been doing this for a long time. I have a lot of experiences with myself and with others. Something just doesn't track right with me. On an amateur level. I get it from a professional level. They are trying to really, really like push the bounds of what their body is in just that year. Right? They're not thinking they could give less of a shit what their body's like when they're 50. They don't care. Right? I was watching like a Magnus Detlev video, and he did this like trainer ride, and they're like, what do you eat? He's like, I don't eat any vegetables. I just have like 2 giant bowls of pasta after every ride. And he was like, this isn't really healthy for most people, but it's just what I do. And so I think that's like a perfect like small set of a summary of what we've done as like age group athletes. If we look at what these professionals doing and the high rate of calorie expenditure and the rate in which they're performing, and then the hours that they're on course, and also like how they've already trained their bodies to oxidize fat and be metabolically flexible. And then the rate and what they're trying to do is none of them are thinking long-term. They're all thinking about, can I win this year? Can I win this next race? Mm-hmm. And so I think as amateurs, we forget that we're amateurs and that, we have a life to live. Yeah. I think it's a delicate, nothing is delicate. I think it's a topic everyone should really consider going into their next year.
Dude, that is so perfect. I mean, what he said is, this isn't really healthy, but it's what I do or what I have to do or whatever I'm doing right now. I have a few things, 3 things that I think about that are to me so logical, but I think we forget them, and me included. Going into the race, all of a sudden, I'm going to do this whole nutrition plan that, I may have practiced a little, or like, we talk about practice and nutrition, and that does mean finding what you said is just like the minimal effective dose is, not a lot more. I think we have a tendency to just pour that gas on the fire in the race, and that becomes a problem. So, because when I think about it, it's like, first thing is like, when I'm more fit, when I'm in better fitness, I just don't think about fuel as much. I don't feel like I need it as much personally, just on an average basis. And I think that can translate into racing as well. And second, the reality is, we eat well, and we just normally eat all the time for fuel to build muscle and, to create strength in our body and everything like that. But on race day, to pour in extra food and fuel, I wonder about sometimes, because really water and electrolytes or salt or sodium, that's our body's electricity. You know what I mean? That's what gets the muscles moving. And I think is like the key, absolute key. And then we always like kind of spin that into getting more sugar. And I think it's just a sort of like I don't know, it's like a safety valve or something where it's more sugar. And then I always have this feeling like in a race where it's off, like you're saying, and I know that I've given my body a lot of something that it didn't want. And then last thing I think about from a logical perspective, Ironman's been doing these races forever, whatever, how many years. And then, so, I mean, it might be a little silly thing, but they always put water first in the aid stations. To me, that signifies something. Like that is ultimately the most important thing.
Right.
Doesn't it? I mean, and it's the last thing.
No, it's a great point. I mean, it's
they know more than most people. They've seen it all.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Great point. I never thought about that.
So,
yeah. I mean, if you go back, right, and you look at, like I wonder how many calories you probably took in an hour the first year you ever did Wisconsin.
Yeah, I don't know.
I bet you it was probably less than 100. I bet 100. I bet you it was like less than 60.
Throughout the whole day?
Yeah.
Yeah, oh yeah, probably, yeah. Because I mean, on the bike it might have
right?
been 250 or something.
Yeah, and everyone always talks about like caffeine and how you need to place it in a very specific in the race, but I also feel the same thing about sugar. Because like to me, like a sugar crash to me, and this is coming from a coffee drinker, like a sugar crash to me is way worse than a caffeine crash. And so if that is the like if sugar has that dramatic of effect on your body, right? Then if you think about like your want and need for more of it, I think you have to really question like, do I really need as much? Because again, like going back to what we were talking about, like it's about just enough to get by, right? It's not about there's no, you don't get a prize for training your gut to take on more if you're still slow and you have GI issues 24/7, right? To me, it's about like, and I honestly think that's probably like the way that I'm going to go in the future is like, not how little can I have, but what's the maximum that I can get away with, is it minimal effective dose, right? Like how little can I get by? And again, I think it also plays to, like you have this mainstream push of more, and this is what again, like the top 1% of 1% that don't care in the world about whether they're going to have diabetes in 5 years, right? Whether their body is totally shot because of what they're taking in, but instead, looking at it from like, hey, like minimal effective dose for me, and you go out and most amateurs go out, they don't do a lot of true training that works on your fat oxidation rates because they want to go, it's too boring. They go too hard, too fast. You go too hard, too fast, too often. All you're doing is using your glycolytic system. You're not training your body to oxidize any fat. You're training in a zone, right, that's totally dependent on glycogen, or mostly dependent on glycogen, because you want to go too hard, too often, all the time. So then what do you feel like you need more? So I need more sugar, more carbohydrates. So I got to train my gut more. So you train in a zone that totally distances itself from being able to use your body in a totally different way, because no matter what kind of training you do, no matter what zone you're in, your body still utilizes fat and carbohydrates. It's just the percentage shifts as you go from one end of the spectrum to the other end of the spectrum. But then you get in this zone and you're going fast all the time, and so all you're doing is burning through, so you feel like you need more to keep up with the rate in which you're spending. And then you get to race day and you're not spinning as much because you're going lower, but you're just overloading. It's like putting your empty drink down in the soda fountain, and you hit it and you see it hit like, maybe 3/4 of the way up where I should just stop it, right? It's going to fizz up a little bit. I'm going to walk to my table, and if I do it now, I'm not going to spill any. But you just leave it there. And you watch it fizz in, you watch it overflow, you get to the top, now you gotta like barely make your way tiptoeing your table before you spill any. Like that's, to whatever reason, like that's what we've gone to. And I don't think anybody is even mentioning, like, from a health standpoint, like what's doing to your health in general, and the dependency we have. You got alcohol, you got drugs, you got those things, but like the sugar to me is at the top of the list in America. From the most addictive substances out there is sugar. And so, like I don't think anybody would tell you, like, yeah, a little bit of sugar is not gonna kill you. But the amount of sugar that's in so many things now, and the amount of sugar we're trying to like take in, and again, like we do this to be healthy. So I think it's just a good exercise in like how are we treating our body, and are you really actually just really wrecking your body in what it can do, right? Because if you go back and you look at what people have been able to do for such a long period of time, and how they trained, and how they try to train their bodies to be as efficient as possible. I think we've gone in two different areas. We've gone from training our bodies to be as efficient as possible to training our bodies to be as dependent as possible. And the more dependent, as with all things in life, the more dependent you are on anything, the more that can go wrong, right? sugar crashes, more bonks, more, gut issues, everything. So the more dependent you make yourself, right? And I think a lot of that is also training your gut. There's way more room for error than going out and training your body to, only give it what it really truly needs, and only enough to need it to get to the end of the day. Mm-hmm. And I just think that's something we should all be aware of.
Well, you said it, man. That point about, are you wrecking your body with all whatever? I mean, that's been on my mind for a long time. And you talk about that, like the pros that are just going for it, and just, I think we all do it. I think we go through phases where we have that in it. And, I used to really get after it. And I think that's part of why I'm a little cautious with my training, is that I know in the long run, if I can't keep that up, I can't keep up the pounding, I can't keep up the whatever. And I'm very happy with going about it what I am. And it's just becoming, for me, more of a spiritual experience than a go out and crush it and always be thinking about, getting so fast. I mean, I don't want to give in, but I'm searching for, that really nice balance with things. But, it's a tough one to keep going. Like you're saying, just carb loading and spaghetti every meal. And, there's just got to be a holistic approach, and I think it can work. It's just that you got to find it, have confidence with it, and really be comfortable. I mean, I think, it's almost like, I don't want to say starving your body, but like it's almost like I felt like the other day I was better off with nothing than continuing to go down the road of hell with the, goos and sugars and all that shit. You know what I mean? It really turned into that, and it kind of does sometimes. And after, through the middle of that race and the run, I was, kind of on the water a lot, and have a few chips or something. It was like something like it, and it just seemed like it turned around right towards the end. And of course, like I said, I went to Coke, and for something about that magical elixir just kind of balanced everything out together or something. And I don't know. It wasn't like I was really gooing up or anything like that, but I started to feel, I mean, I don't want to say strong, but pretty good. My running stride and everything, was painful, of course, but I don't know, something started feeling a little, better at the end. So it was just a weird thing. I don't know. It's a great conundrum, really.
It is a great conundrum, man. It's like, because even then, like when you take that swig of Coke, you're like, well, what was it? Was it the sugar? Was the caffeine that gave me the jolt?
Yeah.
Or was it the fact that I had let everything else kind of run its course and I was more empty than I was before, so it hits your body different. Mm-hmm. Like having your cup of coffee on an empty stomach versus having it with a full stomach. And yeah, dude, it's a really interesting. Again, which is why I think everybody's is so different, but everyone also tries to do it, not one way, but I think and listen, this is we'll stop here because we can talk about it. We'll talk about it more Thursday, because I got a lot more to say on this.
Right.
This is the time of year to explore that, right? It's like, when the weather is perfect outside, and just, we'll stop here. But like, when I go back to like look at run camps that we've done these crazy 3, 4, 5 hour, where a lot of people are transcending what they're physically capable of. No one's taking in 120 calories an hour. Like they're not shoving down, they're not eating like they're going, like it's a lunch. Like you got a handheld, and because running is like one of those things where like you just don't. You just don't. You can't take in as much for one because of the mechanics of running. But if you look at it, and you're like, yeah, but I'm taking in 4 times that much when I'm on the bike, and I'm not putting out nearly as much. It's just yeah. I mean, and because you want to fuel, but I just think we're overdoing it, which shocker, gluttony, right? In America, it's like we're overdoing it. There's allowing yourself to go to spare glycogen. But there's Because I think the average person can only hold like 600 to 800 calories in glycogen for like regardless of, depending on your weight and muscle size. That's it. That is it. But if you like, but there's just anyway, we can talk about Thursday. There's just a lot of ways I think to skin this cat, and I don't think that the answer is always shoving like, don't be the person that runs out for a 5K with the fuel belt and 6 goos strapped to your body. It's stuff like that is crazy. And again, if I said, hey, go out and run for 2 hours, I'm giving you nothing except for water. You could do it. You could 100% do it. Would it be your fastest? No, but you can train anyway. We'll shut up. I'll shut up. I gotta save room for Thursday because I think it is just a fascinating topic with really no true answer for all, but a very, very true personable answer for each. And I think that's something that just needs more conversation.
Yeah, I agree. I'd love to talk about that next time too. Before we go, I had 2 athletes that DNF'd out there. They both went in this race with very challenging circumstances, and both had thoughts that it was going to be really, really tough to even get it done. And they both went after it and hung in there to the last, minute. They gave it everything they had and they didn't make it. And sometimes I'm so proud of them because like just to go into it is everything for me like that. It's like you're odds against the wall, no chance really. I mean, really very, very, very slim chance just hanging in the end. And I just want to say I'm proud of them. I'm not going to name them, but
no, I mean, it's perfectly said. Yeah, I think, and this might sound weird, but I think for a lot of people, myself included, I think for a lot of people, starting is harder than finishing. Because once you get out there, but just having the courage to start, you're in. And I think everyone that gets out there and toes the line and gets in the water, regardless of the shape, but especially if they, in the face of imperfect circumstances and plenty of self-doubt, like I give those people deserve all the credit in the world.
Yeah.
Well said.
Yeah.
Well said.
I don't know. It's just, you see everything happen, and it's like those things that just really kind of touch you. And that's why I say when I look at this, I'm more and more looking at it as just a spiritual experience. You go out and you go through very, very painful, tough circumstance, and you're learning, you're growing, and that's the reward, and that's how I'm looking at my races now. I haven't been able to do what I had hoped, from back in the day, but it's just, it's part of life, and it's definitely something to feel grateful of or about, and just the ability to go do it. I mean, it's so easy to forget that.
Beautifully said.
So there we are, longest podcast of the year.
Yeah, dude, you came to play today. Talk about durability.
Well, I told my athletes, I was like, after you do that, and I've done, all these every year kind of thing. And I've yesterday driving back or last night, and, so I feel like I need to, I could write a book right now about this. So it's just so many thoughts that go through your head, from spanning the gamut of emotional, spiritual, physical, it's just, what an experience, man. I did, honestly, I just almost got choked up again, just coming around the end to finish, man. It's just like, I don't know, man. Something, when I saw you right at the end there, that guy, I was running most of the way upstate, and then at that end, it was just like, I need to get a breath here and then just finish it up. And some guy just corralled me.
I saw he was giving his best, like Tony Robbins.
He was top notch in my face with none of the shit, that medals, the podium, all that did nothing, Matt. You did it, and you should be proud of that. And I was like, I know, man. It's like, I get it. But he just was right with me for about, 50 feet just in my ear. And then I saw you, and then I got, started running again. It was kind of I could hear it, but it was an eerie silence mixed in. And then you do that little spin around now that they have, and then you come down the chute, and that's when I kind of started getting a little emotional about it, because I don't know, man. There's just like getting through that is just, to me, why do you keep doing an Ironman? I don't know. I think it's just that moment, man. It's like that whole run, all I could do is just wanting to be done. But when I got done, it's sort of like, wow, I get it now again. Crazy.
It's one of those, listening, like from where I was standing outside the hotel, listening is one of my favorite parts. Because you can hear like the ebbs and flows of this, of like the cheers and the screams, and you can see people, like when I saw you, that's also when people start to like hear it, and you can just, they get this like, I'm done, like I'm about to be done. And if you've never experienced it, it's a special, especially after dark. It is a special, all the magic happens after dark. No, all the first place medals are in the light, but all the magic, it's dark. And it's just, if you've never experienced it, either as a spectator and definitely not as a finisher, it's something to behold. That is 100% for sure. It is something to behold.
Yep, it is.
And I think you see people at their best. So yeah, it's a special spot. Capital lit up, dark, finish line. You turn the corner. It kind of like sneaks up. It would totally sneak up on you if you couldn't hear people, which is also why I think it's such a cool finish line.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're right. All right, man. That'll wrap it.
That would do. Wrap it. Went OT today. We're back Thursday as always. We love you guys. We appreciate you. Go to our website, c26triathlon.com, and there's our one-stop shop of all things coaching, camps, and community. If you need anything from Mike, he's available. Mike at c26triathlon.com. If you need anything from me, Robbie at c26triathlon.com.
All right, man. I appreciate it.
All right, dude. Check you Thursday.
Yep. Bye-bye.